Yay! What's up, everybody? We are live. We're talking about the new Netflix anime, Yasuke. I'm super excited to talk about it, and I'm also super excited because I have a guest this way. I have Miss Chauncey K. Robinson in the house. She's an award-winning writer. She does reviews. She really does a ton of really cool horror reviews as well, so make sure to check out her channel. And thank you for being with me, Chauncey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, collab with you from AfterBuzz TV, that life that we had, and
yes,
such and whatnot.
Throwback, yes.
Yeah.
Well, at the top here, for anybody new to this channel, we'll talk real quick about our experience with anime. So, because this is an anime show, and then let's see how much that's adjusted based on experience on how much we watch. We're going to do a basic review of the show, no spoilers at the top, so don't worry. And then we'll get into a full discussion because there's a lot of things in this show that'd be nice to express our feelings on. So, all right. So at the top, Chauncey, what is your experience with watching anime? Do you watch often? Have you watched many of the new Netflix anime shows?
I guess I'm one of those people that has to kind of just jump out to me. Usually I don't go looking for it necessarily. It's, growing up, and it's this whole debate sometimes because it's like, is this anime? Is this not? I just like cartoons sometimes. So it's like, I just go with where it's like, I like things like, Sailor Moon, of course, but I know some people are like, is that anime or Dragon Ball Z? I used to always watch Dragon Ball Z. That was my jam. And there's been other stuff. There was Castlevania that I liked the first season, kind of fell out of the second season because I felt like it became kind of a lot of political talk, like not political talk, but like just talk a lot of time. And the episodes are like 20 minutes. I'm like, where are the fight scenes? I like fight scenes in anime. That's kind of my deal. And I recently watched Dota, which I fell in love with. That was a Netflix one that I came across. And so a lot of times, usually if it stands out to me, I'm not someone who Berserk was something I used to watch as well. Very depressing kind of show. So I'm hit and miss because I don't know. I feel like sometimes it can be hard for me to follow the story in some animes. I tried to get into what was it? Demon. What is that one everyone talks about? The demon thing.
Demon Slayer. I was going to say, girl, if you haven't gone that far in it, I'm like, get.
Okay,
so good.
I tried. I didn't like it. I couldn't stay with it. I tried the first season and I was like, this is chaotic. I don't know what the story is. I'm trying. You gotta ease me in because I watch movies and stuff and everything. So, but it was just too much. I was like, there's a lot going on here, and I pick a lane so I can care. So, but I tried it. I tried.
Hey, that's all that matters. I would say for anybody trying any new anime or show, give it at least 3 episodes because some shows it takes a while to get going. And this show, Yasuke, is only 6 episodes. So if you only watched a few, you may as well finish it.
Yeah.
For me, if anybody's new to this channel, I love anime. I generally watch all the Netflix animes that come out, just check them out. Though some I'd say are very hit and miss. What's often missing is a really good core story to keep you with it. I'll still watch the whole thing, but it just doesn't, it's not quite that. Something's missing. And so this one, I was excited for this new show because I was like, oh, cool. It's very historical fiction. If anybody is unaware of the new show, it's very loosely based on a real person. And I can't recall if it was a tweet or a video, but I want to say it was the creator, LaShawn Thomas, or someone more in the creative, like the making of it. And they said how they wanted to make this show not necessarily super, like this is not a History Channel show. It is much more, they wanted to have like the fantastical with it because so many other samurai legends and anime go that direction. So I think it's cool they took it in that direction. We'll talk a bit more about where they all go with it. But yeah, initial thoughts. Chauncey, what do you think of Yasuke?
I was really excited to hear about it because it is a story that I think more people need to know about, the actual historical thing. I love history. I like to pass the time. I love just watching documentaries. That's kind of my jam when I'm not watching like a horror movie or something, is to watch documentaries. So I love history. And so I was excited for the idea that they were going to explore this character. With that said, I didn't love the series. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it looked gorgeous. I mean, it was a gorgeous series in terms of the look of it, I felt like. But in terms of the storyline, I felt like they chose, in terms of how they told it in the order that they told it, I didn't feel like I felt like they could have just done it chronologically instead of they just kind of jumped to certain things early and then went back to other things. And I'm like, you could have just stuck with this part of it, the thing you're flashbacking to for like the whole first season, things like that. And speaking of the fantastical, I thought it was too much of the fantastical to the point where it was like, it didn't trust the history of being, because history is so fascinating, like we say, fact is sometimes often stranger than fiction. And I just felt like they didn't trust that this could be such an interesting story without all the extra things that they added to it. And that was unfortunate because I feel like I had heard, God rest his soul, Chadwick Boseman was actually supposed to play the live action version of this. And it's kind of like when that didn't happen, they went with this anime. And I kind of hope eventually they still do a live action with another great up and coming actor who could give it the kind of the kind of depth that Chadwick could have given it, because it is a story that if you lean into the history of it, just like the story of like the Black Cowboy and things like that, like there are so many things that are in history that you don't need. And I think that just stung a little bit for me. Not stung like, oh, I'm so mad, but like, it was like, okay, I'm judging it by the fact that they didn't trust the history, I guess. Yeah. If I hadn't known about it, if I didn't know that this was based on history and this was just something about, maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. But it was kind of like you had better source material and you didn't lean into it.
Yeah. You mentioned the animation. Absolutely agree. It's stunning. So the animation studio is a Japanese studio, MAPPA, if I said that right, MAPPA. And the show, if you haven't heard anything about it or you haven't gathered from the thumbnail, it is about a black samurai. And so it's an alternate reality. I'm looking online here of 16th century feudal Japan. So it's like the late 1500s. And it's an African-American man who, his name changes though, because they just call him Yasuke because they can't say his name, which is, that's one thing I did love about this show is they have a lot of very meta awareness moments, I felt, because they ask him, what is your name? And he says his name. And they're like, we're just going to call you this. And I was like, oh, I just feel that's a great statement to anybody, anywhere who's been trying to say your name. And people go, we're just going to call you something else.
Yeah.
So there's that. The fantastical part of it. I didn't love the mechs. I love them in the landscape. The pieces in the ground and just like look like they had been there a long time. But the actual animation of mechs in the fighting really felt out of place for me. I didn't mind. There's some kind of fantasy, I'll do air quotes there, characters where they're kind of not regular human beings. Yeah. I thought that actually kind of worked. I'm like, sure, I could believe that. But the mechs, how they were done, really took me out of it. I was just like, okay.
What do you mean by mechs? Is that an anime?
Yeah, that's all right. I love that we can check on this. So mech, it's like an abbreviation for the robots, the giant mechanism, those giant robots. It felt so weird for them to be how they were in the battlefield. I think it was an interesting creative idea to try. It just didn't really work for me with the fantasy feudal Japan vibe. It really felt out of place. And there's another thing. Also, there's a storyline of a villain, and we'll get that later on because it's a spoiler about them in a way. But I didn't like a plot line early on with a villain. I felt that was also super out of place. And it didn't fit. And it felt like a really lazy choice of a villain. Again, stick around if you've watched it to see who I'm talking about. But But overall, I think it was very enjoyable in general, but it felt really lacking in the story of like oomph. Like, it was interesting. Like you said, it was interesting. And I love the idea that it's a historical figure. There's a moment early on where the feudal lord that he is with, and they see him and they make him strip. And in some light research, they only made him take his shirt off, but they think his skin has been dyed with ink. And I was like, wow, this felt so awkward to watch, of them like, you're dirty, let's clean him up, because his skin isn't like a pale color. And I mean, it's interesting to think of yourself in like feudal Japan and you've never seen a black person before. I guess it's a logical conclusion of like, well, you've put something on there. How was that for you watching? Was that like, I don't want to give you an adjective, but like, how was that scene for you?
I mean, that scene and some others, there were some moments when it was kind of funny, because it was like, you know, there's a fight scene where the person's like, whoa, a black samurai? Do those exist? I thought that was funny. I was like, okay, that's funny, because, hey, you know, is that a thing? And then there were other moments when I did feel like it was a little bit forced. I was a little weirded out, because I was like, if they've been doing trade and things like that, and they've been going around, and when you do trade and things like that, usually, you know, because there's this weird kind of thing when it comes to history, right? Where it's like people feel like everyone just kind of stuck to themselves for the most part throughout it. And it's like, well, if you know London, you know, that was like a port and that people came in and out. So people were aware of other people and the way they look, especially if they were like an empire or they traveled. And then you also have this place that, like you said, has like, you know, machines and things like that. I mean, they couldn't have been so isolated as to not have seen anybody else. Maybe the people in more of the rural areas, I can give them that. But some of the people in like the major areas, like the empire and stuff, I was like, this seems a little forced if these people are aware of things as they are. It's like, it's either this is like around and they kind of have seen the world, so they have an idea, or you're saying that they've been isolated just to themselves the whole time. Because if you're going to do that, you kind of have to pick, because I felt like it was a bit heavy-handed, the whole thing of, oh my gosh, we've never seen a black. And I'm like, okay, but this guy, we just saw a whole scene of how he got to be there, which was trade. And I'm like, you ain't never seen nobody else before. This guy literally has this guy standing there. He ain't never brought no one else before. Like, it just didn't make any sense.
Fair. Absolutely. I think they could have handled it a bit better. So the feudal lord that he serves is Nobunaga. I was trying to find that name. So that was a real person also. So it's 1582. What I was finding on it for the real guy, and there's not a ton of information. Looks like he maybe came with an Italian Jesuit missionary, and so he was probably one of the first, but maybe Nobunaga, maybe that was his first experience. But to make him naked, I felt was a bit much. Can we just like pull up his sleeve? Like, really? I don't know. It was a bit much. But I agree. It is a bit like they had the moments where the other like band of villains, I don't really want to call them villains, but that like other group where they're just like, oh, you're black, do you know him? I was like, whoo. Like, it was funny in that it was awkward, but I think that was maybe the point. So any other thoughts before we get into a deeper dive of this? So in case anybody we're getting ready for spoilers. We're not there yet, but any other thoughts on this show, and would you recommend it to people?
I would recommend it to people if they enjoy this style and this genre. You know, I think, give it a try, right? I mean, if you're, like you said, if you're someone who you try like most of them, you know, there's no reason not to try this series. And it is probably one of the ones that I did feel compelled to finish it, because I was wondering where.
Just 6.
It's just 6 episodes. But even in the 6, I felt compelled to finish it because I did want to see where things went. So I think it can draw you in. I just think that there are certain misses throughout it. So I don't think people will absolutely fall in love with this series. But I think I have hope that, let's say they did a season 2 or something like that, I have hope that would that they would take some of the issues that happened with season 1 and make it better, because it wasn't like riddled with mistakes. There were just some major ones where it was just like, you could have done this different. So I'd recommend it to people for sure. I just say go in there with your expectations not low, but just medium. This isn't going to be the next best thing, or like everyone's talking about Invincible and stuff. It's not going to be that. You're not going to be blown away every single episode.
I think that's a very fair assessment. Yeah, this is a show that definitely worth checking out. I love that they're addressing this plot line of having a black samurai. I think it's cool. Of like, I don't think I'd ever really heard of this person before. I do wish they had leaned a hair more historical, or at least can we make another thing out there that's like actual history? Because it's interesting. Of like, ooh, tell me more. Like, that's such a great idea. There are some problematic things, like the robots, the mechs might take you out of it a little bit. So but maybe go in knowing they're going to have real-ish stuff, some fantasy-ish stuff, and giant robots. So very loosely real life, but there's some great fight scenes. The animation's gorgeous. Another thing we didn't quite get to, I'm like, oh yeah, the soundtrack is great. I did love the music. No? There's two. There's the intro song and then there's soundtrack. So what were your thoughts on the soundtrack, like the score and the different beats in the show?
The score was fine. Was fine. That intro song, it didn't make no sense. It was like, what are you doing? What is this? And I didn't understand how everyone's walking around. Some people are holding. Some of this stuff even comes to fruition. I get it. I've seen enough anime to know sometimes it's not based. It's like some weird kind of, music video or something. But the way it was, I was like, this is like so not the vibe of this actual show, and neither is this song. And I'm just like, what is this? And like, my boyfriend and I, when we were watching, we just kind of made fun of it. We were just like,
it is weird.
I was like, what is this? I looked up the lyrics. I'm like, the lyrics don't even work for whatever this story is. Come on. Totally Lakeia wanted his friend to write him a song. That's what that was. Lakeia is like, that's what that sounds like to me. Someone got their friend to write a song.
I feel the visuals are very typical of an anime opening. We have the person looking off, people walking. There's a great montage. Like I pretty much just Google or look on YouTube like every anime opening ever, and it's just a montage of like the sequences of things that happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's in like all of them. Yes, I felt the tone of the opening song was a bit odd and didn't quite fit with the show, and that does happen, and that's always a bit like theme song doesn't match show vibe. Okay, throughout the show they had some great what you would think for Japanese style music. They got some shamisen going on, but then they also brought in some kind of jazz stuff and more contemporary music, and that totally worked. But agreed, that theme song, I think I might like it on its own, but it was a little bit weird with it, of just like, okay, I didn't hate it. I've definitely heard theme songs where you're like, skip, like I don't even want to, but so overall we'd say sure, check out the show.
I give it like a B-. That's my grade for it. I give it about a B-.
What would be a grade of something you wouldn't watch that you'd be like, don't touch it? Would that be like an F?
I don't usually give Fs. Usually, it has to be so horrendous.
I was gonna say,
and I've knock on wood, I haven't seen anything that has been completely like, holy crap, holy crap, who made this? The lowest I usually have ever gone is like a D. And I actually, any anime I have seen, I've always think that they're like C's and ups. So like Dota, I gave an A because I fell in love with that series, and I just thought it was like on point in terms of the storytelling, and that opening actually is like gorgeous. That opening scene in Dota.
Dragon's Blood. There we go.
Yeah, Dota, Dragon's Blood. Yeah.
I did like, there we go. That was the other one. I did like that one. I was confusing it because there's another one that was like Dragons something that also just came out from Netflix, and I'm blanking on that name. That one, something felt missing from the story. I felt Dota Dragon's Blood has really good potential. I want a little bit more info on stuff, But concept and everything, great. I love where they went, and I'm like, can we get season 2 to keep going? But yes, good. Thank you for another. There you go. That's another one. If you want fantasy and just like full on fantasy, that's a direction.
Yes.
You go. So if you're leaving us now because you don't want spoilers, go follow. There we go. Go follow Chauncey. I have all the links down below, and you can find me. There we go, over here at Carrie D Lane online. So warning, we are going into spoilers now. We're going into spoilers. Did you hear me? All right. So if you don't like spoilers, thank you very much for watching. All right.
Thanks.
So spoilers. Okay. One of the other plot lines that I did not like, that I felt really took me out of it, was the priest villain plot line. It felt so like once that gets revealed, it was interesting. Like, oh, this is cool. I like these weird side characters, and like they're kind of villains. And it's like evil priest. I'm like, oh, it just felt really disconnected in this show. Yes, there were missionaries, but it felt out of place. Like in Castlevania, having an evil priest villain totally kind of works in that realm. I get it. Makes sense. Blue Exorcist makes sense. You're dealing with that. In Yasuke, having an evil priest villain felt like I just didn't care, and I was so glad when that plot line was done. And I'm like, there better be a better, bigger baddie, because it just, I just feel like that's also just so cliche now. Like, ooh, it's the evil Catholic priest, and you're like, I'm over it. I need a better, or I need a better motivation. His is just like, it's the power of the church. It's like, wow.
No, I agree with you. I didn't hate it as much. I guess, like you said, it is cliche, so you kind of expect something like that to happen. I thought he was, even if he hadn't been a priest, I thought he actually was a pretty interesting villain in the sense of like the things he could do and everything, and some of the reveals of like him being the father of some of these magical children. Like that was kind of, I felt like they did it more for maybe a symbolic kind of thing, like the thing we were talking about, like the question of Black people being in this area and stuff, right?
Wait, and father of the magical children?
Like when he was saying, when the girl with the magical powers, right? Yeah. He had called her his daughter or something like that. It was revealed that basically he was the one that he had helped create her. Like somehow, I don't know who her mother was exactly, because it wasn't really the woman that took her. But that's not revealed. But in that thing, in the abandoned church thing where they were fighting, it was, you are my.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I caught. It was that. Okay. It was the thing of and I was like, well, that's sick.
Literally. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't take it as literally. I felt more like everybody is my child. Leave a comment down below. What did you think? Because that is the thing with some shows like this. It is like, we all see the same thing, but how you interpret it. But that still makes it weird and creepy. But then would it have been better or more interesting if I would have rather he just be some random trades guy or just somebody. I would rather some random dude looking for power than just like evil priest.
I feel like, like I said, I think they did it kind of for the symbolic type of thing, right? Because you had the idea of, like you said, like the Crusades and all this other stuff where, and then you have a Black samurai, right? You have, because it deals, I feel like there's a little bit of the idea of, particularly, although he's African, he comes from Africa, but because, there's this idea of like, African-American and, what happened with Africans where, their religions, their spirituality was stripped from them, and other people like indigenous and things like that were stripped from them because of the church. And I think, I feel like it is cliche in a lot of those things, but I do feel like there's I feel like sometimes it depends on the main character, right? Because every story's been told. There's no new kind of story in a way. But I felt like because he was this Black character, and because of the relationship between the church or the Christian religion or the Catholic religion when it comes to Black people and indigenous people, I do think it does make it a little bit more poignant the way because of the relationship of it, because of what was done. So I think, yeah, it's been done before, but this is kind of maybe the first time where it's been done where there's a Black character that is directly dealing with that because of the history. So it could be more poignant, I think, just because of the historical context of it. So I didn't hate it. I was like, okay, I get that. I didn't hate it.
No, yeah. That definitely gives it a better approach to it and a more depth. Like it just gives it a bit more context. But even that aside, I still felt like, oh, who is it gonna be? And I'm like, oh, like disappointing.
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I mean, I might have just said I hated it, but in a way. But it was more of, I definitely had a mode of, okay. But I like this weird creature after who's our main villain that we don't technically get a lot of info on them, but that was fine. It was like that worked within this world of being something like fantastical that you go, all right, sure. But
yeah.
so I guess it's because it's just such a real person or real thing. And some of the other, it had more potential.
Yeah.
Some of the other characters.
Yeah, I mean, and I think what really does lean into it is because we've probably seen it so often before. It's such a thing where it's like the church and them doing things because of the history of, you know, and when you have things that are based on history, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, you're going to pick certain things. In terms of like the major big bad, I was actually underwhelmed by her. I thought, and maybe this is because I've seen enough Sailor Moon to know that when I can see an evil lady who's like this dark sorceress, I've just seen it done so much better. And I just felt like she fell short for me in terms of like style and stuff. Cause I feel like with certain villains, especially there's this beautiful dark thing when it comes to women villains, I feel like, where you could play it where you kind of hate them, but you kind of love them too, because they're just something about the feminine form and everything. And then that kind of like unbound kind of, I'm going to go after what I want type of thing. And I felt like they kind of fell short because
they didn't have that with this lady at all.
Yeah. And it was just kind of like, okay, she just happens to want to consume things, and it was like, so what is her being, just to kind of exist and do this cocoon thing? Is that all she wants for herself? And I'm just like, that doesn't really seem like enough of a motivator in terms of like seeing the bigger stakes of things. I didn't really understand, because there was never really and I don't want to say straight up explanation. One of the things was that she didn't want to die. She wanted to live forever. She wanted to just basically be immortal. And I'm like,
I
okay.
want power. Yeah.
But it was like, I want power to just basically be this cocoon-like thing that people come and talk to me.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
really do.
I'm like, you don't do anything. Like when you had like the dark crystal and the moon and stuff like that, and like she had a whole kingdom. She wanted to rule. She wanted to like tell people what to do. There was an actual tangible thing. And I felt like with this, I was like, I don't even know what your end game is. So I don't know what they're fighting against, except the idea that you want to take the little girl. And I just don't think that was enough to draw people in. So I felt like she was kind of underwhelming.
Yeah. I agree in the sense of, I liked her character design of being kind of monstrous and like the spider thing. And she's much more a defensive fighter in terms of people had to come to her and then she manipulated you or made you see things. But then we go with maybe the idea that they have women manipulate you and that's their evil power. No, but she's definitely not a go out and fight as much, and in that way I could see it as being underwhelming, because it's more interesting of this character like we see at the beginning of the battles, and then it kind of goes into it, and then it's like, oh, this is who it is. So actually on that, what was it, I did like the general fighting. I'm like, wait, where was it? I like some of the other magical fighting they had early on, pivoting on fight style. I like the sword fighting, and then they also had the shield. When we had that other character, I'm like, where is his name? When he pulls up the like shadow fighter and does it like the temple. Oh, that was so like, yes. See, that was it where they're like, okay, we can't just be defensive. We have to be on the offensive. So that was really cool.
Yeah. And even with the, you brought up her her right-hand man, right? The evil woman's right-hand man, he was kind of cool because there was history with him, right?
Yes.
He actually, his whole thing was he didn't agree with the guy in control, and he was drawn in by her power or their power, and it was like, yes, I'd rather this than whatever this guy is trying to do. And so I liked that dynamic, that story, that he was so corrupted and that he was like homophobic, and there was other things going on. He was homophobic, he was racist, he was xenophobic. And this kind of just turned him into a monster. It made him more prone to the darkness, to the dark side of things. I felt like that worked a lot better. And when he died and when those things happened, I felt like that battle to me was probably the more important battle for Yasuke, you know? And it was just like, I felt like that was more of the important battle. But of course, that wasn't made. It was kind of anticlimactic the way he died a little bit too. And I was like, well, that's kind of messed up because he was probably the more formidable villain here. He was also one of the best fighters. He trained the samurai. So it was kind of like there was more to do with this character. And I felt like they kind of, they didn't bring him in till towards the end in a way. And then he was kind of done away with within like an episode or so. And I was like, they could have just kind of drawn him out or something. Because out of all the people who are villains, he was probably the most interesting to me just because of the history he had with the characters. So, but I did enjoy the fighting, and I felt like I wanted more of the samurai fighting, of the sword fighting. And once again, they leaned more on the fantastical. They leaned more on the shooting stuff out of my hand and I can lift you. And I'm like, all right, but this is the Black Samurai.
Yeah.
I was like, let's do more sword fighting.
Let's get samurai. I wore my samurai shirt here. I was like, oh, you can't awkwardly see. You'll see pictures later. Sorry, I was trying to find the names and now I can't find it. But I agree. The fighting, the style, I did like speaking. And then he's also sexist too.
Yeah,
and because
he was all the things.
Yep.
All the isms. He was it. And it was like, that was a great character, especially for a story like this where you're dealing with the Black Samurai. Like, this is the type of character you want to, this is the type of villain, because it kind of makes it so he is a symbolic version of what our main character had to deal with in living in a land that saw him as a stranger. And then you have this character that is like the epitome of all of that. And yet, you know, when he defeats him, it's like, that should have been so significant because it was such a meta, like such a symbolic kind of reflection of his story. But then I think that just leans a little bit into the other issue of the story, which is that the Black Samurai, he kind of takes a back seat to everybody else. Like I felt like with him and I'm horrible with names, but him and the little girl, the magical little girl, I felt like her story, like that whole thing became the main thing. And I'm like, I thought this was going to be about him. And the things that we got about him were flashbacks. I'm like, this thing with him when he first got there and became the samurai could have been season 1. This whole thing in the present, dealing with this evil and character and stuff, this could have been season 2 or 3. They could, I think, and maybe it's the idea of, you know, instant gratification. Maybe they were worried people wouldn't stick around but once again, this is what I'm saying, where I'm like, they didn't trust the source material, that they didn't believe people would stick around for a first season of showing him learning to be a samurai, dealing with things. And maybe some magical stuff could have happened because they have to go off and fight this other thing. I would have liked to spend more time with his mentor and things like that with the emperor. You know, I would have liked that because he was an interesting character the way they were, you know, and it was just like, all we got was them in flashbacks. And I'm like, this whole thing, him and that love interest of him, the woman samurai, her situation.
Natsumaru. I liked her, voiced by Ming-Na Wen, which was really cool too. Yeah,
and it was just like, I just felt as though, I was like, this could have been the whole first season. Yeah. And yet they rushed to him being older. And I'm like, this could have been the whole first season because this is way more interesting than what's happening here.
Now, question, you mentioned first and second season. Would you have liked it if it was a longer season? Because 6 episodes is pretty short. We are getting kind of used to that style. But I was thinking early on, I hadn't quite thought of season 1 and 2, but I thought this show would benefit from being longer. If this is 12 episodes to get more depth on different people and circumstances, it probably would have had a better impact. So would you have rather maybe like a 12 episode season or break it down into season 1 and 2 or either way?
I think I would have probably preferred a season 1 and 2, but in chronological order. Okay. I think the issue is let's say we did get more episodes this season. I worry that the more episodes we would have gotten would have been more about the present stuff. And this is the thing, when you have all this stuff happening in present, and him even beating the symbolic representation of the racism and things like that against him, we didn't get enough time so that all of that would emotionally land, right? You know, we meet the female samurai who was awesome and great, but then when he has to kill her, it's like, yes, that resonated because I really like this character, but how much more impactful would that have been had we had spent a whole season with her and that growth of a relationship and what they were dealing with. And then maybe the final battle is the second to last battle is that thing. And then all heck breaks loose to what we saw in the very beginning of this season of the empire being taken over by the evil woman. And then season 2 is defeating her years later. Like, this could have been done in chronological order. I feel like even if it did get more episodes in this one season, I feel like because of the way they chose to tell it, it still wouldn't have landed as well. Sometimes you just have to sit and marinate with the story. But I feel like you were saying, in this day and age, we like shorter seasons sometimes, I guess, because maybe they're more binge worthy. I don't binge shows. I know I'm behind the time. I can't. I can't sit through a whole season in one sitting of anything. I don't care if it's even 6 episodes.
Oh, yeah. I've done like 8 hours, like Shadow and Bone, which anybody, if you haven't watched that yet, she has a great breakdown of the characters of that.
Yeah,
I sat the entire 8 episodes. That's one sitting of 8 hours.
I did that in 2 days. I did. Okay. And when I have to do reviews, like if I get a review of a series,
yeah,
I will sit through it because I have to. Yeah. Because I have to review it.
You have to.
But if it's something I'm choosing on my own to watch, I will spread that out because I feel like maybe this is why we're in this kind of profession where I like to sit with stories. Stories like affect me. I feel like I'm sitting with characters and things like that. So if I have to do that for super long, it can be a lot. It can be a little exhausting for me. And I like the fact that some streaming services are doing this thing now where they're doing the weekly kind of thing. I know everyone's hating on it. Some people are hating on it. They're like, oh my gosh, WandaVision, you should have released this all in one thing and things like that. I'm like, no, it's great that they let us do this for once a week because we can actually, like the old days, sit and think about what actually happened this episode. And we all can be on the same pace together, experiencing this as a community. I know, wishful thinking, but it just, I just feel like they need to spread it out a little bit more. I'd like longer seasons of stuff. I think 6, and then you got to wait a whole year for the next one. You binge, and now you got to wait a whole year. That's even worse.
I feel this show suffered from being short.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind the flashbacks, though I felt we only got more on him and Nobunaga, the Lord. So I would have wanted more to learn about, grab her name, Natsumaru. I would have wanted more on her. I thought she was interesting. And then also, the guy that, I'm like, that guy, the one who was in charge of them, which I thought that was great because he's grounded in reality and we get that. We don't agree, but we get why he would be against these changes. And like, he's used to, I want things to stay the same. It's like, okay, I get that motivation. I follow. I don't agree with you, but I follow where you're going. So it's like that grounded in reality makes sense. But this show, I think, kind of gave us little bits, like we skimmed across the top. Some characters got a little bit more extra moments along the way, but some of it is very kind of surface level that it would have been. I love the idea of doing a first season as like, this is who this guy is, and then lead into that because it just kind of like wham throws you in. I thought the flashbacks are super interesting. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, give me more of this history. I thought it was interesting where he ended up. Also, that would maybe give us more. It would also give it more importance of him where he is now, that he is such a loss when the show starts, of why he's so depressed essentially, and he just goes through the motions of life.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was my other issue with it, was because we got thrown into him being kind of a depressed, sort of, I don't want to talk to anyone, the brooding main character guy. And that to me is kind of cliche too, right? That's kind of a cliche. And we've seen that a lot. And it would have been nice maybe to have a first season of him being, because when some of the flashbacks, he seemed a little bit more optimistic. It was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Sorry, my kitty. I'm going to do this and do this other thing. And, I'm cool being here and I'm learning and I'm kind of just, and it would have been a little bit more hopeful. And then you can kind of appreciate the fact that he got to the point that he did. And I felt like when they kind of went straight into him being the brooding character, I was like, this is such a cliche. It's such a thing. And then the little girl is what brings him hope again or something like that. And I'm like, oh, we saw where this was going. And I think that also shows that they didn't, and you can tell me, because I don't know, is this a thing in anime where there's a thing where when there's a little magical girl, like she kind of becomes the focus for, like, I don't know, the audience or something, where people, maybe there's a thing where people think that people identify with that kind of character more. And that's why they get so much focus, because I feel like maybe they didn't, it was kind of weird to have this be a show with the titled character's name. And yet his main objective is just protecting this, this little girl. And it was like, wait a minute. And it was just like, we couldn't, why didn't you trust that he could be interesting enough that we could follow him?
I liked your co-star, by the way. We had a cat visit. I'm going to say, if anybody's watching, so we got Fizgig. She's like, I'm going to sit in your lap or I'm going to complain. The magical girl trope is a very common thing, and it is often a main character of leading you through a story. I think this show did it it didn't stand out to me as too awkward, because we had him say maybe too much, where he comes from, everybody protects children.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was like, all right, cool. He never had kids, so he even more is like, I need to protect a child. I mean, maybe that's the thing that brings him out of his fog that he's in. It wasn't too disjointed for me of him focusing more on this child, because they keep saying like, well, we protect the kids, and it's like, oh, okay. Maybe that's the match, that sparked the change. One thing though, the kid leading into her friend in the village, man, they flip-flop their opinions on people so easy.
Seems like the public though. That's real public people. Yeah. That's real. That's real.
Yeah, that guy the boatsmith, he lives outside of town. He's quiet. He never does anything. Oh, he's a murderer. Oh, hey, we love you. You're back. I was like, oh, come on. I would have wanted, especially from the young boy, I would have wanted him to have some more doubt.
Yeah.
And him to be steadfast in his conviction that Yasuke didn't murder somebody. That was weird. I wanted that to come back. I really thought it was weird to have that character, and I was hoping she was still alive. I was like, we're looking for her name.
I guess why I'm hoping season 2, that if there's a season 2, because she was also powerful.
Super interesting.
And I'm like, she was only in there for a second. We only got a little bit of her thing. I'm like, somehow, I mean, if they do a season 2, I could see her coming back.
I was like, no body, no proof. She might still be alive. I felt it was really like awkward of like, wait, where did this character go? She suddenly was here and now she's suddenly gone.
And she was interesting. We don't really get the whole idea of why she decided to steal the girl. Why she decided that, like, it would have been cool to have a conversation like that, and why she made that choice to do that. What compelled her to do that? And it was kind of like, was this just a plot point for her to have that same necklace on that was from the woman that he cared about years ago? I was just like, okay, that's kind of contrived. You know?
disjointed. Yes, it felt very like, wait, what? Sorry, I'm moving a thing here. Yeah, it felt really weird, and I wanted more from her because she was super interesting. And there are times in anime where they do. Here's a character, and you're supposed to instantly like them or not like them. And I felt like she was somebody I did like, but I wanted more, and it felt really weird to be like, and she's gone. You're like,
yeah. I thought she was going to pop back up somewhere, like towards the end fight or something, like, and be there. And they just totally, I was just like, what was the point of this character then if that was what you were going to do? It was just, it was a little weird.
She's like, oh, I'm injured and I was in a coma, but I've healed and I've returned. That's why it took so long. Like,
that would have been fine. I mean, she clearly had some kind of, you know, powers or something and abilities. And it was like, that's how easily she got taken out. Like, come on. It was just weird. We didn't get a chance. We got to spend a lot of time with certain characters, like the band of like misfits.
I thought they were really kind of cool. Well, actually, speaking of them, so I was like, where are these characters? So we have so Abraham was our creepy priest. Again, I feel that was me. So Haratu, I love the robot. That was actually really funny. I thought he was very
amusing. Funny for sure, yeah.
And then he was friends with, I was like, where's that girl? I liked him with the girl who had I think it's Isakawa, which was she's like, she had the big scythe. I thought their interactions was an interesting source of humor. But again, I would have wanted a hair more character. There we go. The priest storyline is only to give these characters depth so that when they die, we care.
Yeah, because they changed over. And...
I cared. I wanted more with them. Nikita, I love the Russian werebear.
Yeah.
That was cool. I felt
she was cool.
Kind of like, what? That felt a little too abrupt.
Yeah. I mean, she went out like a hero, which was cool, but it was also kind of like maybe they could have figured out a way to have her stay. Yeah.
And then here's his name, Ahuja. And sorry if I say that wrong. So that was the tribal shaman. I did appreciate that he was like our other essentially token black character.
Yeah, and he understood that. It was like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Like, I was like, yeah, I like that. I like that he had a person that kind of begrudgingly, they understood each other. Even if they weren't on the same side the whole time, they understood each other's role. And that's honestly, that's just true. You go into, I mean, especially as I just can say this as a black person, sometimes you go into a place and you're like, okay, I see another black person there. I might not even talk to you in this whole evening, but I know you're there. You know, I'm there. We're good, you know? So I got that.
It makes sense of a solidarity of it, because then it is you versus you are the other in that case kind of idea. Like those two people. I thought they were interesting. I wanted more. I was glad we got more with him. The Ahuja, I liked his fight style and everything. I thought that was kind of cool. Like, that's an example where actually that whole band of like misfits was a good example of how you were able to have magic and kind of mysticism with the werebear of like, sure, fantasy, they can change shape and everything like that. Surprisingly, her clothes constantly seem to be okay.
Yeah.
Because she gets way bigger, y'all. So it's not like, it'll change. And like that robot made sense. I was like, cool, I get them. But then outside of them, it did feel weird. And I was sad when some of them died so quickly. I'm like, oh.
Well, yeah, and it seemed like they were in a rush to get to something, but you don't know what. It was kind of a rush to get to this big bad villain who we just really got introduced to, because he wasn't actively trying to fight her for the past 25 years, right? He kind of just went on his merry way, and then he comes across the magical girl, and then suddenly it's like, okay, we have to take her out. So it was also this. It was like, okay, so the big bad, they won. So what changed that they won? You know, like I never got that vibe too, because the town was okay and everything like that. So what exactly happened? What was like her rule? What was going on? Because you know, like I said, I mean, my one reference sometimes is Sailor Moon, but when they won, like the whole Earth was kind of, or the Moon Kingdom and stuff was like thrown into darkness. Like it was significant that it happened, and it was weird that they won, right? We saw that they won like 25 something years ago, but everything else seemed fine. No one was referencing them or their rule or anything like that. So it was kind of like, was it such a bad thing? I don't understand what the stakes are in this, you know, since the world's not affected.
Yeah, it's the Yami no Daimyo. That is the mage who conquered a swath of Japan, who seeks to take Saki's power for herself, seeing her as a natural threat. It's a good point. I don't feel, see, that's another thing. I wish we had more episodes to dive into what does it mean that the daimyo was in charge, like in charge, air quotes, of like just taking over what, because this village is it, I mean, they reference that they understand her minions of like these soldiers coming through, and also they can't go upriver because soldiers, but it didn't seem to really change everyone's way of life, which I think maybe that would have given our villain more gravitas if it was like, since she's in charge, the sky has darkened and our lives are miserable, and this is why we have to change it. Because then what's the push for Yasuke to really defeat her, besides the fact that her advancement killed his lord?
Yeah. But, exactly. It was kind of like he just ends up somewhere down the river and he's fine. And Yasuke is just like, okay, that's cool. And it's just like,
a beautiful home, by the way. His like picture, I mean, the inside's kind of okay, but the outside, I'm like, that looks very pretty and peaceful.
Yeah, he made a life for himself, but it was kind of like this main villain. I was like, so what was the change necessarily, except for the idea, like you said, like if you go upriver, it's a war zone. But why is it a war zone? Are they just naturally violent up there, or is there a resistance going on? Is there a resistance of people trying to come against them? And also it's like, where does, like you said, Abraham fit into all this? Is Abraham aware of this character? Right? Are they having their own little thing with this character? It was kind of like, what exactly is, I mean, I think this goes to what you're saying about some things not fitting. I feel this goes to world building, right? Like you have to do the work with world building. Some people do it better than others. You know, sometimes it's an exposition dump. They just kind of let you know, okay, we're going to get this over within the first episode or the first 10 minutes. This is where we're at. This is the way the world is. These things exist, and that's where we're at. And I felt like this show never really took that time. It was kind of like we were thrown into, we saw things happening, and now we know, okay, this exists, like you said, along with the machines. And it's never really explained how, who, like, where did this come from? Is this because it wasn't necessarily like steampunk, right? It wasn't like, you know, where everything's kind of like magical steampunk and things like that. It wasn't that.
See, I think I would have liked that better.
Yeah. Like, was it trying to be? I don't know, because there wasn't enough of it, but it was there. And it was like, you gotta do a little bit better on world building. You have to be clear so you can convey that to the audience, what kind of world we're in. And when you don't let the audience know, hey, you've been transported here, and not just showing things show up, but really explaining what exists in this world. You have some shows where vampires exist, but werewolves don't, or they both exist. You have to establish that, because if you don't, it can be very off-putting because we don't know the stakes. We don't know what's the rules.
Exactly. It's like, build your world, tell us the rules. We as viewers accept those as long as you stick to them and say what they are. Actually, now that you made me think about it, so the robots on the battlefield, I feel they would have worked better if they were more steampunk-esque. They feel way too modern for what that time is. And they have like laser beams, and I'm okay with magic. Like, if they had shown that it's magic users inside making the laser beams that way, that would actually kind of work. I recently watched, I want to say it was the Guy Ritchie Arthur movie. It's very Guy Ritchie. If you like Guy Ritchie, you'll like it. If you don't like him, you probably won't like it. But that one, they had magic users doing things, and you could see them doing things to get a result that seemed not of that time. So I go, okay, cool. I buy it. Magic exists in this world. They're the ones doing the thing to make XYZ. In Yasuke, it felt more just like, hey, so we have 20th century robots, 21st century robots in this time. Well, even more, because it's like they just do giant laser beams and there's no problem, and nobody... it didn't quite fit. I feel they could have done those better world building.
Because I think you also, like, you make a good point, because it's also like when you have things like that, it also when you have world building, it also justifies certain people existing in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you have this thing where a big thing is the samurai and how cool and powerful the samurai are. But then you have this world where you have things that can shoot laser beams and stuff. And it's like, well, can the samurai fight that? What is,
right?
you know, it's like, are they really the baddest warriors? Because you can create these things that can pretty much maybe take them out because they use swords. They don't use anything else. So it's like, how can the samurai be as significant? And that's what I mean. I feel like they made his character, although he was awesome. And when he was in battle, it was like, oh yeah, we get it. Yes. But it was like, because there were so many other elements in this universe, it didn't make it so he was as epic as he could have been, because they created so much other stuff around him that just seemed like, well, of course he can easily die.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like this is that thing where you go, hey, you know what food sounds really good right now? This, and this, and this. Let's put it all together. Oh, wait, that doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
I think they had a lot of really great ideas, but shoving them all into one world without adjusting and compensating for how those would work together.
Yeah.
Made it not land well enough. Speaking of the magic, I was like, there we go. I found his name. I want to say it's Morisuke. Morisuke. Sorry if I'm saying that one wrong. So he was the doctor who can treat and train the fighters. That was super cool too. And we don't really get anything with that of like, okay, cool. School for the gifted. It's X-Men of like, how are these other kids like, what? And it's just kind of like glossed over. I'm like,
these beings exist also in this world. Yeah. And it was like, okay, but why and how? Who are the first? Like, how does this exist? Is it magic, or is it something in their being that's like, you know, a chromosome or something? We don't know. Nothing's really ever explained.
And you wouldn't even have to fully explain it, but I would want a conversation where Yasuke's like, oh, that's cool. You can do that. Oh, yeah. So we have these abilities. We don't know where they come from. And like, boom, done. Problem solved. 3 lines of dialogue kind of idea. Like those are moments where, yeah, exactly. If you had a little bit more exposition, we would care more. It would give more to this world building instead of just glossing over the surface of, sure. And I mean, yes, I guess we could take that as viewers, but as viewers, we want more because why not? Like, give us more info. You've created this, you've made this great thing. You know, we want to consume that product, but I guess maybe our standards are higher now. I don't know. It's like it had a lot of potential, and I feel is solid as a show.
Yeah,
but it didn't quite land enough based on all the things we just discussed.
Yes,
it's like, okay, hold on one second. Sorry. Dog is like, I am done sitting. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up and for this chat?
I guess like you were saying, I do think there should be a season 2. I'd be happy if there was a season 2 and maybe a little bit kind of taking a little bit of a better stance. It would also be cool if we got a little sense of like his life in Africa. Like he was, you know, a very noble person from there. Because, you know, it was cool that there was one other Black person there. But I do think sometimes also when you have these kind of shows, and not just in anime, but sometimes you have these shows where a character is indigenous or Black from somewhere else, they are like the only person there. And it's like, it's for all intents and purposes, it's kind of still a show that they are the token, even though they're the main character. So it'd be cool if like you got all this other stuff happening. Wouldn't it be cool to see some people from his family or just other people of other beings who maybe are not all, you know, the same race, and he's not, maybe, you know, different kind of people. I think that would be fun as well. You know, maybe he goes around the world and he sees different stuff. I think this has series potential. And a different opening would be great.
Well, season 2, hopefully they normally do a new one. I think actually that would have been a great idea if in one of the flashbacks we have at least a quick moment of, I want to go explore the world. All right, cool. How'd you get to Japan? Boom. That would have been fine of just like, what was the moment before he got there? And then that would give us more context to who he is.
Yeah.
And
like what makes him. Yeah, what makes him that way? What makes him so not easygoing, but he seemed to be okay with things. Not like a pushover, but he seemed to be like, I get it, the way this world is. But we never got any kind of, except that, you know, they all take care of the children. We never really got a sense of like, I'm pretty sure there's probably something of a strong mother or a strong father. Did he ever miss his family? Like, you know, there's never any of those aspects of it. Yeah, like what happened there? Was he kidnapped and put on the Middle Passage boat or something like that? Like, you know, all of these things could be explored, but they kind of just went straight into him meeting the Ember. And it was like, there's a lot more. And this is what I mean when I say that, although this was supposed to be about his character, I felt like I didn't get to know him as well as I did some other characters, which is crazy. But sometimes that's that's a little bit of the shortcoming, I think, when there's also this idea of trying to appeal to audiences who you don't think might want to identify with the Black character too. There's a little bit of that can play into it. That's why I was asking about the whole thing of the magical girl, like the young not white girl, but like she's kind of drunk, right? But like, you know what I mean? Like
per this world, she's Japanese, but that's like the context when people are like, reminder, most shows that are anime are in Japan, so these characters, even if they look white, are Japanese.
Yes. I need to learn that. I was like, Sailor Moon, she's like blonde and that. Like, okay,
it's magic. It's the Jedi. Like, just ignore this. Well, then but it depends on the show. Sidebar, because some shows like Ouran High School Host Club, a character, he's blonde hair, blue eyed. They specifically say he has a parent who is French. So they're like, he's half Japanese and half French, and that's why he looks different. Or they have a student in, I'm blanking on the name of the show, but another show where they're like, she's American or some other not from Japan and is living there now or something like that. And then they go, oh, that's why you're blonde. But then, there's stuff like Sailor Moon where it's like blue hair, blonde hair, green hair. Nobody cares. Like, it's
and we're all just whatever. Like, they're all just, you know, which, but then, probably deals with some weird colonialism and things like that
But then bringing it back to Yasuke, like, it is, yes, there's a fantastical, but it is grounded in the sense of he is Black. He is from Africa. He is a Black man. I loved how they did his hair, by the way. I liked how he had dreads, how he had the undercut, and like it was functional. And I liked that it was like part of his identity. They don't really go into details on it much, but I thought it just visually was really cool. And I think he was such a chill dude to be like, yeah, it's cool. I'm used to people being surprised that I'm Black. And it is kind of one of those, they kind of gloss over that as well. Because I would think the way it's done the show, that would probably happen constantly. But he handles it so well. He's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and it would have been cool to see, like, was there a time when he wasn't so cool with it? Did he learn a way to just kind of, you know, do what he did? I mean, he stood up to that guy in a foreign land when he came. And it was like, what possessed him to not be afraid, to just be like, I'm going to do this? He has to have a backstory to that. Like, you don't just become that kind of character. And I thought, like I said, they should have told it chronological. They should have told him when he first left Africa, and then when he got there. That it could have been a whole thing, but I guess they just wanted to really jump into the fantastical, dark, you know, villain, end of the world thing.
Yep. I like very much. Please leave a comment down below your thoughts on the show and the topics we discussed. Do you think the show should have been longer? Did you like the out of order storytelling, or did you think it should have been chronological? Please leave comments down below. I think it has great potential as a show to finally air and come out with a Black samurai character, because that just hasn't been done before. So it was like, ooh, that had that pull. And I totally agree with you. I wish they had relied more on the actual history. You could have still had those fantasy aspects, but giving a little more actual history moments, more like bullet points, and then add the other stuff, I think it would have made it better. And just make it either, I'm okay with either a 2-season, or I think it would have been better to be longer, regardless of 1 or 2 seasons. But it just felt, it didn't give it enough. And I really hope that doesn't turn people off to this kind of a show, because it wasn't good enough. But
Yeah.
there are plenty of mediocre shows that get mediocre things
So
made
many.
later. So let's just say that first. But anyway, yeah. Any other comments you want to make?
No, that was it. I mean, I love the show, and I would recommend people to check it out, but don't feel compelled just, you know, because, I mean, we want to support. I think you want to support things like this, especially for representation, but I think you also want to hold it to a high, a standard of being a good show too. So.
Exactly. Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Chauncey.
Yeah,
it was
thanks
really
for
fun.
having me.
Yeah, it's nice. And then also shows anything you watch, consume. It's always nice to talk with others about it, even if you don't think exactly, even better when you don't think the same things on different points, because then it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, or, oh, that's really cool, I didn't notice. So very cool. And thank you for all of your input on that too.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
And then let's put that back. There we go. Again, go follow Chauncey. All the links for her stuff is down in the description. And it's like mirrored. That's why it's weird. And then over here, Carrie D. Lane. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the things at Carrie D. Lane. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Again, leave your comments on the show. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. And go subscribe to Chauncey's channel, especially if you're into horror stuff. She has a lot of reviews. And also fantasy stuff too, because like I said, just did the Shadow and Bone video.
Yeah. Which is, it's solid. I'm excited about it.
This is a good one. And I agree with, I pretty much agree, I think, with all the ranking on it.
So cool.
Yep. Awesome. Well, everybody, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.